I'd like to call this meeting to order. We have 4 members present. We declare a quorum with 4 members present. Mr. Williams will be here in just a few minutes. Mr. Nugent's out on a family medical situation that he needed to take care of today, and Mr. Harris is with his family as well. They'll be able to look at this online, so please do not feel like they are not going to go back and listen to these. They've both assured me today that they would go back and watch online all the comments that you provide today. We'll make sure that everybody's up to speed by the time we get to next Monday. We're at item C. Dr. Ely?
Thank you, Mrs. Barrett, members of the board. As we have done in the past, we want to do just a brief presentation from Mr. Martindale regarding the administration's recommendation for new updated attendance boundaries to take effect in 2019. I see as people are walking in, I guess I would just want to say that if you, after this presentation, we'll have opportunity for members of the audience to address the board. To address the board, you need to fill out a yellow card, which is located out there in the alcove as you saw as you walked in. As we've seen just demonstrated right there, you bring your yellow card to Carrie Horn. She is the clerk to the board, and she will collect those. And once we get to the point where we're going through the comments from the community, we will go in the order in which they were received. So please just at any time take them up to Mrs. Horn, and that's how we'll proceed when we get to item D. So, but for item C, we've got Mr. Martindale who's going to do a brief presentation about the administration's recommendation. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Doctor.
David's working on it.
There we go. Thank you, Dr. Ely. A very brief presentation relative to the presentation provided Monday on October the 1st, which is available online for the community. It has much more detail. Just wanted to kind of give a quick summary prior to moving to the public comment portion of the agenda. Of course, why are we currently adjusting elementary boundaries? Is to accommodate the opening of our 10th elementary school, River Bend Elementary. That was a part of our 2015 bond package, which included a little over $24 million for our 10th elementary. River Bend Elementary is, of course, scheduled to open next August for the 2019-2020 school year. So a quick look at our current elementary boundaries. We currently have 9 elementary schools. And again, these are the boundaries for those elementary schools in place current year. Utilizing data from September the 4th enrollment data that we pulled a couple of weeks into this school year, took a look at building capacities and used parameters outlined to us in FC local policy for capacity numbers, 85% on the low end, 110% on the high end. We applied those capacity percentages again to September 4th enrollment to determine how we were utilizing our buildings currently. Just a few observations from our current campuses and boundaries. College Hills is just under 110%. Greens Prairie has exceeded that 110% capacity threshold. Forest Ridge is 105. Pebble Creek is the lowest as far as utilization of current facilities at 68%. I will make note also, as I did at Forest Ridge, but Creekview and Southwood Valley are both just below that 85% capacity mark. We take the information from our demographers that projects out again for our current elementary schools and boundaries. The red shading indicates an enrollment, projected enrollment over that 110% capacity projection. So you can see that in the out years in College Hills. They were already at 109% this year, already getting pretty close to the 110%. I mentioned Creekview and Southwood Valley. The green represents under 85%. Both of those were at 84.4%. Forest Ridge and Greens Prairie. Greens Prairie was already at 112%, continues to track even larger in the out years. Forest Ridge, projected to grow fairly quickly from this year to next year and in the out years from there. So the red shading is 110% higher, the green for less than 85. And of course, Pebble Creek, as I mentioned, the 423 is at 68% capacity number. Taking into consideration that data, of course, kind of drew out our needs for preparing administration's current recommendation for bringing River Bend on. Of course, with our needs, we have to get students to our new 10th elementary school, River Bend. We need to increase our enrollment and use of our capacity space at Pebble Creek, and also look at how we can reduce our current enrollment at College Hills and Greens Prairie. And of course, you can see the out years with Forest Ridge beginning next year. All three of those campuses were trending above the 110% mark. This is a copy of administration's recommendation for attendance zones. Again, this is bringing River Bend Elementary on next year. Just highlight real quick, or using the cursor, the brown area is River Bend, the color codings there and the keys for everything for reference. And again, much more detail on every particular area that's impacted is a part of Monday evening's presentation and available to the public. The areas that are impacted, there would be no recommended changes to the Southwood Valley boundaries. River Bend would draw from 6 of our existing campus boundaries. Those 6 campuses that River Bend would pull from would be from South Knoll, Greens Prairie, Spring Creek, Rock Prairie, Creekview, and Forest Ridge. And River Bend is this large contiguous area here on kind of the west side of College Station ISD. Other areas that are changing, not directly feeding Greens Prairie, but as I mentioned, addressing some of our needs area from our projections, is recommending changing the area here up the northern part of the district, currently zoned to College Hills to Pebble Creek. It's twofold, adds capacity to Pebble Creek and reduces some of the enrollment currently at College Hills. A second area from Forest Ridge to Spring Creek, located here, that's from Highway 40 on Victoria going to Wallace Phillips and Castlegate 1. And the third area is the Greens Prairie Reserve Development, currently zoned for Forest Ridge. We're recommending to Greens Prairie. So those are the areas that are changing associated with River Bend, and then 3 others again to address some of our capacity issues throughout the district. With the new recommended zones, these are our projected enrollment numbers from our demographer. As you can see, we get College Hills out of the 110%. Forest Ridge also, with the exception of projected as 707 and 23-24, and then they move back down below that mark. We generate capacity at Greens Prairie, which is over now. Pebble Creek also, we move them from the 400 mark up into the 5s. We bring River Bend aboard with about 438 kids as well. And then Rock Prairie and Southwood Valley is tracking in the 80% range. These are our economically disadvantaged numbers. Projected northern campuses, which are College Hills, South Knoll, and Southwood Valley, range from 53.9 to 60.1. Midtown campuses, Rock Prairie, Creekview, and River Bend, range from 39.2 to 45.7. And there are campuses located in the southern part of the district, Forest Ridge, Pebble Creek, Spring Creek, and Greens Prairie, from 18.1 to 29.3. Our grandfathering recommendation is that all students entering 4th grade next year in the 1920 school year whose attendance zone would change or be impacted may elect to grandfather and stay at their current zone school. So basically, kiddos that are third graders this year, if their zones change that would impact them or move them to another school, they may elect to stay in their current school next year's fourth graders. Again, I went very quickly through this. The full presentation from Monday evening is available to our community on our homepage. The maps, the videos, much more detailed in relation to what I shared this evening prior to our public comments. And of course, the community can provide feedback through feedback@CSISD at any time, and I know that information is passed along to the board to review.
Thank you, Mr. Martindale. We'll move on to item D, open forum to receive input related to the recommendations for elementary attendance boundaries and their implementation. This is a public forum. During this time, public comments are welcome. The board is assembled only to gather information. The board will listen, but the Open Meeting Act prevents us from responding to speakers. Please complete the note card and give it to the executive assistant, Ms. Horn, who's sitting over here. And the yellow cards are out on the table if you missed that. The public comments are limited to 4 minutes per person. Each person has one opportunity at the microphone regardless of minutes used. Unused minutes may not be accrued by another speaker. The executive assistant will time the comments and alert the president when the time has expired, or in this case, the vice president. The board will not allow derogatory comments. When you come to the microphone, when you're called, if you will state your name and your address, that will be helpful. Thank you. Okay. John Anders.
One second, I'll get you all fixed up.
I was going to use them, so that's helpful. Thank you for pulling those up. I appreciate it. Let's see. Actually, is it possible to display them on the? There, it kicked in. Cool. Hi, my name is John Anders. I live in Castlegate 1 at 4211 Colchester Court. So I'm actually in this group, which is being rezoned to Spring Creek from Forest Creek. So I wanted to say, am I speaking loud enough so you can hear me? Yeah. Okay. Can you guys hear me better? Is that all right? Oh, for the recording. I'm sorry. Yeah. So I live in Castlegate 1, and I'm in this area I indicated that's being rezoned to Forest Ridge from Spring Creek. I wanted to say a little bit about why I oppose this particular part of the rezoning. A lot of folks that live in that area bought their homes in that area for specifically that school, Forest Ridge. A lot of our kids, like my son, who's now in second grade, have been going there for several years. They're comfortable with the school. We have a walking and biking path that we take there that is safe, and we don't think it's a good idea to change those things mid-course. So I recommend not rezoning those guys, allowing a grandfathering that's a little more generous than what's been proposed for everyone who's currently enrolled, and possibly including siblings. I think this rezoning is different because those homes are being developed now, and people who will purchase them will do so with a knowledge of which school their children will be zoned to. I wanted to say a couple of things about why I think it's important to keep the zones, keep at least this part of the zone the way it is. First of all, let's see, I can go back to the numbers. Where is the projections? Let's see, oh, I'm going the wrong way. Yeah, so I had a hard time understanding where these projected numbers were coming from. So for example, if you look at the Spring Creek totals.
You want the projected numbers?
What's that?
Projected numbers.
Isn't that what I was on? No?
There's your projection.
Ah, thank you. Okay, great. So the Spring Creek projections are basically flat. I mean, they're showing in 6 years about a 30 student growth. But there's a ton of new development, about 150 homes that are going in right into the area currently zoned to Spring Creek. So I'm not sure how the demographer made these estimates, but I'm not sure why the estimate ought to be so low. It seems to me even if you did nothing, you'd already get a lot of growth into Spring Creek. So if you take people from Forest Ridge and put them into Spring Creek and combine it with that existing amount of growth that I think we're going to get, I think you're going to end up pushing Spring Creek up to that 110 cap as well. I'm not also sure where the Forest Ridge numbers came from either. These are the ones for the new zone, I think. I wanted the ones for the old zone. So the Forest Ridge in the current model is showing.
Speak into the microphone, sir, please.
Sure. It's kind of hard to point at the same time. I need like a laser pointer, right? The currently Forest Ridge is projected to grow, a little over 200 students. So that's well over a 30% growth. I'm not sure where that number is coming from. The new development that would be driving that is going to be in Indian Lakes, where the home sites are large and the per person number of children is probably small. So I'm not sure why the demographer would estimate a huge 30% increase here at Forest Ridge and basically, I don't know, maybe 10% at best increase at Spring Creek, even though Spring Creek, like I said, is subject to a large number of housing developments, which are likely to bring in a lot more kiddos to that school. So I think there's some questions about. Okay, I'm done. Thank you all.
Eric Moretzka? Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
I apologize that beforehand.
First of all, let me say that my dad was on the school board for 18 years when I was growing up, and it was up in Minnesota. So I know it's a tough job. We got a lot of late night phone calls from angry parents. So I'm going to try my best not to be one of those angry parents. And I think you all have done a tremendous amount of research, and I know you're not going to make everybody happy. Having said that, let me kind of share with you how it's going to impact us. We have 4 boys.
Can you share your address too?
Sure, it's 4952 Hidden Acres.
Thank you.
Where was the map? There we go. That's the recommended? Well, that's okay. I just want to show you where we are. We're right here. Okay. We moved here in the summer of 2015 to care for my wife's ailing parents. And since that time, Parker, my oldest, has had 4 schools. Combination of graduating and also getting rezoned several times. So this is now the 3rd rezoning we're going to be impacted. And I will tell you that we voted for the bond measure because we believe in it. However, if you'll notice, those 3 schools, which are Greens Prairie, Pecan Trail, and Welborn Middle School, are about a mile from our house. And we'll have kids at all 3 schools at the same time. It's really problematic then to throw us all the way down, and it's going to be about a 9-mile trip as opposed to 1 mile. And if you've been on IGN, notwithstanding the construction, if you've been anywhere near IGN on those intersections, it's terrible. So not only is the distance about 4 times greater, I would say it's going to be about 9 to 10 times greater in terms of time. My wife is trying to do all the pickup duties and such, and we tried doing the busing, but the busing was, let's just say it was not a great experience because a mile from the school, it took about an hour for them to get home. So that was a no-go for us. So they lost a lot of time doing homework and such and activities. So I would just like to reconsider, at least, I mean, on our little pipe stem there, Hidden Acres, we're really the only family that has kids in school. I understand there's a big development behind us, then that does impact your numbers. I know you're trying to manage all that, but just humbly consider what would be the impact of taking the Brown and moving it to the Copy Bridge Road area. It's just a really, I mean, if you look at the map, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have the kids that are going to go to that elementary school, but still going to that middle school and that intermediate school. It's just it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you just look at the map. I understand that there's numbers involved here, and I get that. But meanwhile, all the kids that are in Saddlewood are still going to Greens Prairie and Pecan Trail and all that such. So I would just like to offer a suggestion that perhaps what would be the impact of moving that brown line over to the Copy Bridge Road area. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. James Pfeiffer.
Good evening. We're at 3812 Dresden Lane, which is in that area right there. First of all, I want to say thanks to everyone for serving on the board. We really appreciate your time, your service. We understand this isn't an easy decision or process. My wife and I are a two-parent working family with 6-year-old twins currently enrolled at Rock Prairie. We're the only neighborhood east of Welborn Road with a school that's currently under capacity, slated to be rezoned for River Bend, and we don't feel like we need to be rezoned. Basically, well, let me go here. So we don't feel our neighborhood needs to be rezoned, and your own numbers bear that out. Can we go up and down here? Right now, Rock Prairie is scheduled to go not up by students, but down by students in the next 6 years. Right, so it's projected to lose attendance, and yet we're going to rezone and uproot our families, or at least our commutes, to send us to another school. We don't feel there's any reason for that. So what would you be asking us to do, basically, is have an entire community of people guaranteed to have children in their cars pass over the same railroad tracks that have currently been in the news for having crashes, fatalities during peak travel hours on congested roads 4 times a day. That's 80 times a month. That's more than 300 times a semester. Adding traffic to a major thoroughfare through town, Welborn Road, which just has a new HEB, which just compounded that traffic. Months before, that very thoroughfare is restricted to be closed or restricted for up to 2 years, and I'm referring to the impending Bush-Welborn crossing project, which I'm sure you're all aware of, in order to move them to what is not the closest school, that's Creekview Elementary, which, according to this committee's presentation, is well under capacity at 84%. That's the closest school within walking distance. Not the second closest school, that's Rock Prairie, where they're currently zoned and is also under capacity. Not the third closest school, that's Spring Creek Elementary, which is also under capacity, but to the 4th closest school. In fact, there are only, according to this committee's presentation, 5 existing schools in our district that are under capacity. 3 of them are closer to our neighborhood than the proposed school, and all 3 of them are on the same side of the railroad tracks. And again, our neighborhood, the Rock Prairie neighborhood and the Creekview neighborhood are all fully developed. So we will not be contributing more kids to the schools in the coming years as a result of expansion, which your numbers bear out in the projections. In fact, we're actually trending the opposite direction because college students are moving into our area. And so our numbers are going to be trending down with regard to children that are, going to be going to these schools. So yeah, again, I just wanted to say we don't feel it's necessary. We feel it's going to add an undue burden on our families, undue burden on the amount of time we're able to spend with our children, and for literally no reason than to just move kids into a school to have them there. So again, we know this is a difficult decision. We appreciate your time, and we just ask that you reconsider. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Elise Sumner.
Hi, my name is Elise Sutphin, and I am at 15202 Meredith Lane. That's in the Meadow Creek subdivision, which can be found in this little area right here. My points are the same as, I'm sorry, what's your name? Eric. As you can tell, we are right next door. Literally, he's maybe slightly closer. We're more like 2 miles away. And the other school is going to be a whole lot further down a very busy road in a very busy area now that it's booming. And I just don't see the necessity of jutting that out right there to include that area. Now I know there's lots of development. Our little nook right there is done. We're surrounded with lots of rural. And as far as I know, the immediate surrounding, those homes are there to stay for a little while. Now, I realize further out, there's more development happening. My other problem is that I have a fourth grader and a third grader and a second grader. So he'll be going into fourth grade. He is grandfathered in, but my other son will not. So that would just definitely cause some problems for us. We have an older son who will be going to the middle school. So we definitely are in that area very much. And then to have one that could not attend and go to the other school would be hard commute-wise and everything like that. You'll have to excuse me, I'm nervous. I don't talk in public very often. So those are my two main points, is possibly not including that area. You moved this area, which is obviously right there, and to that area, maybe there's some leeway right there to work with. And then as far as grandfathering in siblings to current kids who are grandfathered in, that would be my two main points today. That's all I really have. Thank you.
Thank you. Maritza, okay, help me. Chavarria.
It's actually I have a hyphenated last name. I don't need the last one.
Oh, well, sorry. I blew that, didn't I?
So I'm at 2244 Carlisle. And I'm actually, I guess the best way to make my point, my son likes stories. So I just want to tell y'all a story, okay? It's a little boy, his first day of school. He stands about 3 foot tall, and he's 5 years old. And he carries a backpack. And it's oversized. It's way too big for him, but he loves this thing. And inside of it, he carries his little Yoshi bear, because it's the only thing that makes him feel like he's at home. And he's scared. And so as mom and dad try to push him off to his first day at Forest Ridge, his little wobbly legs won't even let him move. He won't budge because he's so scared. And his eyes are welling up with tears, and he's not wanting to go. And his mama can't even look at him straight in the face because she can't let him see that her eyes are full of fear and tears too. So she turns and she can't look at him. But finally they scoot him off and he goes on to his first class, and he loves Miss Vizuric. And he starts to learn to love that school Little by little, he starts to learn to love that school, but it takes weeks to finally get him to the point where he loves that school. And it's the familiarity of his teachers, of the principal. Those huge, huge hallways, they're not so huge anymore because he's starting to learn the way they feel. And eventually, he starts to get confidence in himself. And he comes home and he says, "Mom, I'm a falcon eagle. I'm a pineapple, and I am brave and I'm strong because they tell me that every single day." And he's learning that through these teachers. He's learning that through Miss Vizuric. And this rezoning, what it's doing, finally, he's able to go to school, and Yoshi hasn't been in his backpack in a week because he's learned confidence that he's gained through the comfort of those teachers. And the point is that this rezoning, every time you take these kids out, you undo all of that, all of it. Whether he's in fifth, or he's a kindergartner, or a first grader, or a second grader, this is hard for those kids, our babies. It's hard for them, and it hurts. And it's just like my mother loves roses. It's just like roses. She tries to uproot them and replant them, and every single time a rose will die because it's not healthy to uproot them. And we're asking y'all, at minimum, to keep this neighborhood, Castlegate, intact, because that's what made him feel better. He'd go and he'd see his cousin. He would see his friends from the neighborhood, and that made him feel safe. But we're dividing this neighborhood up. And the thing that makes Forest Ridge so amazing is that we come together as a community. It's not just about what happens on the inside of those walls, it's what happens on the outside. And we come together as a community, and we do things. We make it family events. It's not just about the inside of the school, it's the outside too. And this rezoning is going to crush a lot of that. These people, we won't be going to school with our neighbors. We won't see them. We won't be able to go to the same events. Falcon Palooza, my son is so excited about this thing. And the kids talk about it on the walk. He's a walker. He loves it. We can't walk again. We won't be able to walk with this rezoning. And it looks like there's only 50 kids in the Castlegate community right now that this is going to affect. 50 kids that have to do that. And you're going to eventually have to rezone again and do this again to those kids when we look at the projection rates. We're asking you to reconsider.
Thank you. Heather Norman.
Hi, my name is Heather Normand, and I'm at 4208 Camper Court, which is in the Castlegate portion that is proposed to be rezoned to Spring Creek. First of all, I want to thank the board for all the time that you put in to considering options and rezoning. I know it's difficult. It's a hard task, and there's so many factors to consider, and I understand that. And I spent the past 48 hours trying to dig into those factors as best as I could. One, I want to lead off with recommending that you reconsider splitting Castlegate from a neighborhood standpoint. When we moved to College Station 6 years ago, the first thing on our list was that we wanted a neighborhood school. There weren't many options for that in College Station, where you had a school that was connected to a neighborhood. We settled on Castlegate for that reason, not necessarily because it was Forest Ridge, but because it was a neighborhood school. Now, I've grown to adore Forest Ridge, and they're my family. I cannot imagine leaving them. But so 6 years ago, that was our decision, was based on being in a neighborhood school where our kids would walk and bike to school with their friends in the neighborhood, would be able to stop at the park on the way home and play with friends from school, would be able to go to fall festivals and Easter events and trick-or-treating around the neighborhood with friends from their school. So by separating and dividing Castlegate, we lose that neighborhood school family. That's what we chose the neighborhood on. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. Secondly was, again, speaking to what the person before me said, was that it's 50 students. And I'd like you to reconsider the impact that that has on keeping them at Forest Ridge and really looking at those projected numbers a little bit. I understand that the demographers have gone through a whole system to look at those projected numbers. as the rezoning is proposed, the only neighborhood in that zone that would continue to grow at all would be Indian Lakes. And I ask that you go back and investigate that. Talk to that developer, talk to the demographers again about that neighborhood, because the rates of moving into that neighborhood have slowed down tremendously. And with all the other neighborhood options that are coming up in the near future, I don't know that the numbers will go up as high as they're projected. And again, speaking towards the Spring Creek projected numbers, I do question that those are maybe on the lower end, knowing the neighborhoods that are about to be built and zoned to Spring Creek, and the open land that would be naturally zoned to Spring Creek if that land did get purchased and developed in the next 7 years. So I encourage to relook at those projections, because the last thing we want to do is move kids out of Forest Ridge that are in their Castlegate neighborhood and then have to ping pong them back again in a couple of years. The other thing that I wanted to speak to was the walking and biking safety. I know yesterday several parents spoke to that. In Castlegate, there are dedicated green belts and biking paths that are separated from the road. So it's really safe. My son is a second grader. He'll be in third grade next year. We're considering him just free reign, ride your bike to school. And we wouldn't worry about it because he's not sandwiched right up next to a road. Again, this is why we considered a neighborhood school, and that was important to us, to be able to give our kids that independence in a world where that independence is often stifled. So we wouldn't be able to do that going to Spring Creek because it's right on a busy thoroughfare, and my second grader is not the steadiest bike rider. So I wouldn't want to send him up next to a really busy road. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, Melissa White. Oh, I'm sorry. I lied. Brian Watkins. I got ahead of myself. Sorry about that.
Brian Watkins. I reside at 3708 Essen Loop. That is in the Edelweiss subdivision. That is your little brown square right here. The point I want to talk on today is actually one of how the zone is actually laid out. The attendance from that area to Rock Prairie is actually minimal. We actually know a lot of the families there because we've lived there for a long time. We're going on almost 12 years in our home, and we know a lot of the families that attend that school that live in our little area. My son is in the second grade. He is one of 3 second graders. If you move him over, you're doing a fractional percentage shift to kids to this new school, which is, as another point was made, 4 schools away in terms of distance. And we have to cross very heavy traffic. You know, we're concerned about that. But the big issue is the fact that you're moving him there and he will be ping pong back in 2 years. The reason is because he would be districted for Cypress Grove. All of the other kids there are districted for the other intermediate schools. You're talking a very small percentage of students who would leave their friends, come back, meet their friends again 2 years later. In those 2 years, they're going to have to make new friends. It's a very small handful. I don't understand why that subdivision got grabbed and moved away from Rock Prairie when there's 2 schools right there that are under capacity, and we're not even filling them. Why would we have to cross that kind of distance to cover that? So I recommend that you don't grab Edelweiss Gardens and move it anywhere. I'd say leave it at Rock Prairie because it's actually a relatively small number of students. There's no more growth. A lot of it is actually turning into rental property, and it's being rented by college students. And the projections are showing that. The fall off it's part of that's being contributed by Edelweiss Gardens. We see it all the time. I see it on the loop I live on. So it's not like I'm suddenly seeing 20 families moving onto my loop. No, it's not that. We have the opposite problem. We've actually seen a decrease in families around us, which we don't necessarily like, but it is what it is. We don't mind. But the one thing I would consider is in this model, look for those small fractions of where students are getting moved around. Because I suspect we're not the only one that's happening to. Because we saw some other places in the map where there's very small sections that are grabbed and moved to a new school. I would think that's a general problem. When your schools aren't over capacity, you're talking about moving a few students here, a few students there, but then you have the rearrangement of the secondary schools later, they may be ping pong back and forth across the district. And when they have multiple, like a family of mine, I have 4, they could go up through that school district doing that. And that's like literally like moving my kids. Like I suddenly moved my house, but in reality, I never moved anywhere. It's the equivalency of that. So I ask you to consider not to even move the Edelweiss Gardens out of Rock Prairie. I mean, if you do, I understand that rezoning sometimes has to happen. We get that. But why are we moving to a school that's that far away? That just doesn't make sense logistically. I mean, I can see us moving. We weren't shocked if you said, "Oh, we have to move to Creekview." That wouldn't have shocked us one bit because we're literally in walking distance of both of those. That wouldn't have shocked us at all. But that far, that doesn't make any sense to us. And the big issue is I don't know how we can't. We'd be looking at probably a 20-minute commute from where I live to get across that in the morning, when it's a 5-minute commute to the current schools we're in, and my wife has to go back home after that, and then she'd do that twice a day. That's a lot of commute time on top of log jamming your traffic because you're actually sending us into a busier area, and we drive right past the current school we are attending. Thank you. Good luck, guys.
Thank you. Melissa White. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm Melissa White. I live at 5018 Iris Lane. I sent this as an email earlier today, so I'm just going to read what I wrote. So I live on Iris Lane. It's a single street with 8 homes, and it's not part of a larger neighborhood. The street is off of INGN Road, just south of Greens Prairie Trail. The proposed boundary adjustment would have Iris Lane zoned for Riverbend Elementary. I'd like for Iris Lane to remain zoned for Greens Prairie Elementary for several reasons. In the 2019-2020 school year, there will be a total of 7 elementary-age children living on Iris Lane. Only 6 of them attend the school we're zoned for because one child attends Creekview Elementary, where his father works. In the 2020-2021 school year, there will only be 3 elementary-age children living on Iris Lane, possibly 4 pending an adoption, and the others will graduate to an intermediate school. We have a very low turnover rate on the street. We were the last to move in 2014. No house has been on the market since, so these numbers are not likely to change. The Greens Prairie Elementary is 0.8 miles from Iris Lane, while Riverbend Elementary is 3.7 miles away. The Greens Prairie school bus has to pass our bus stop to get to Saddle Creek, which will still be zoned for Greens Prairie Elementary. The children would spend much more time on the bus if they were attending Riverbend Elementary. For these reasons, I believe the zoning should be adjusted so that Iris Lane remains zoned for Greens Prairie Elementary. All of the families with elementary-age children on the street have discussed this, and we're all in agreement that this would be the better and logical option. So again, that map shows the little bit that I would propose be put back in the Greens Prairie zone. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Okay. Rachel Levitt.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Levitt. I live on 5025 Iris Lane. I would just like to second Melissa White's points and that we have discussed this and have just kind of worked through all the possibilities. We have for next year, there'll be 3 elementary-age kids that won't be grandfathered in. That includes siblings and peers. It's although they're very significant to us, it's a small statistical significant to either school. So we're asking to stay at Greens Prairie. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have any more cards? Has everyone gotten a card that wanted a card? If you haven't, please go get one now and you can turn it in. Okay. Remember that you can post or send your feedback to feedback@csisd.org. If you have any other comments, we do read all of those comments, so please feel free to send those. If you had something you think about or that you want to add to whatever you said tonight. We really appreciate all of you coming and sharing with us your concerns and your thoughts on the rezoning process. We hope that over the next few weeks that you will continue to pay attention and watch as we work through this together. Thank you very much. Oh, and we're adjourned.